Hi, Warner.
There we go. Just had to find the button.
Hi, Warner.
There we go. Just had to find the button.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Tom Boak, Chairman of the Kennebunkport Planning Board. This is a virtual planning board meeting. We're using the Zoom conferencing format. The agenda is on the town's website, and information needed to participate is there. If you wish to participate through Zoom, you can join this webinar, number 883-6519-6254. You can also dial in by phone, 929-205-6099, and then ask for that number. You can always watch us on channel 1301, stream us on YouTube at Kennebunkport Television. During the meeting, only planning board and current participants, as selected by the board, will be seen on screen. All other participants are blacked out, audio muted, except when the board solicits public input. The public meeting is on the agenda, public hearing is on the agenda, which is true on item 1 this evening. The applicant and board members will have to discuss, will have the discussion, after which I will open the public hearing. At that point, anyone who wishes to be heard should raise your hand in Zoom, and then we'll recognize those people who wish one at a time. If you happen to be using a telephone to connect, raise your hand is *6. Toggle mute is *9. So first off, I'm going to go through the agenda. So we have, I'm here, and Nina.
Here.
Ed.
Here.
George.
Here.
Okay, and that's our quorum is 3, and we have 4. We know Scott and Larry are both away and are both not being on tonight. And John has just resigned, so we now do have a vacancy on the board for an alternate member. And of course, George, you're voting this evening. So anyway, first step is to approve minutes of the last meeting. So did anybody have any problems with the last meeting minutes? I did not.
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion. We accept the meeting minutes as recorded.
I would second that.
Okay, so I'm going to go through the list here on people just to. So I'm in favor of that. Nina?
In favor.
Ed?
In favor?
George?
Favor.
Good. All right, that takes care of that. So the first item on our agenda is item 2201, 28 Wildwood Avenue, revision to previously approved with the Peterson Design Group. So is Mr. Peterson out there? We can get him to bring him forth. Thank you very much. Okay. Eric, why don't you proceed?
Thank you.
Just a quick description, I guess, of this, since we heard it last time.
Yes. So this is an amendment to an existing planning board approval at 28 Wildwood Avenue at Goose Rocks, where we are proposing to construct a new house with a 30% expansion based on the volume and area from the existing house. Our prior approval left some volume and area on the table, and the clients asked me to come back and capture at least the area. So we are looking for the full 30% expansion for area and a slight expansion in volume as well, but both numbers are under the 30% allowed for volume and area. Does that make sense? Roundabout way of saying we're looking for a small expansion on the east and west corners of the north side of the house that differ from the original application request and approval.
Okay. Do you have any panelists have any questions on this? I think we all looked at it last time. Nina, you were case manager. Did you have any other new questions, or you all set?
No, all of my questions were answered last time that we came here.
Okay.
So.
Well, in that case, assuming I don't see anybody else jumping in here, let me open up the public meeting. So are there any raised hands that would like to discuss this application?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, my name is Robin Phillips, and I'm calling. I'm just asking a question. I noticed on this application there was a stipulation to not spray pesticides or herbicides or whatever on this property, and I think that's great. Is that something new for the planning board, or I've never heard this before, so I was just wondering the origin of this, this request.
It's something that we consider, especially when a renovation is very close to water, to the water table, to vernal pools, to a river, to shoreline. We don't want to see any more pollution going into our waterways.
Oh, that's great. I've not heard that. So does that apply just to renovations, or does that apply to like a new home that would be built, near waterways?
It's up to the planning board. If it were outside of the planning board, it would be up to Werner, the code enforcement officer, to determine whether to put that restriction on. We don't put it on every time. But under certain situations, we do try to limit the kinds of pesticides and materials, that go into our waterways. And here you have a sensitive area. You're backed up right in the resource zone against the marsh.
Right. Well, I think that's wonderful, and I wish the town would. I have not heard that, so I'd be interested to know if Werner does that often or not. Do you know?
So I can speak to that, Robin. To be clear, that's not something that I've been granted authority to regulate.
Okay.
That's not something that's within the purview of the code enforcement officer. Those types of things have to be designated through ordinance. In this particular case, where this is going through a site plan review by the planning board, the planning board has broader discretion under their Article 1010 standards that they can, they have the authority to levy, different types of restrictions on projects. And this is one that they've chosen to levy.
Okay, that's great. It's the first I've heard of it, but I think that's wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any more raised hands? Well, then I will close the public hearing. And I guess if no further discussion, I would accept a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second that motion.
Okay, I'm in favor. Nina?
I'm in favor.
Ed?
In favor?
George?
In favor.
Very good. So it is approved. Now, actually, Nina, I believe you have I saw a finding of facts go through.
I do have a findings of facts, and I'll read it right now if you like.
Like it. Thank you.
We can consider that. This is a Kennebunkport Planning Board site plan application of John and Jennifer Schaefer at 28 Wildwood Avenue, Kennebunkport, Maine. The application dated December 24th, 2021 for revised site application to remove the existing building and replace it with a new residence. Following a site plan review pursuant to the Kennebunkport Land Use Ordinance held on January 2nd, 2022, and a public hearing held on January 16th, 2022, the Kennebunkport Planning Board makes the following findings and conclusions and renders the following decision. Findings of fact are as One, the owners of the property and applicants are John and Jennifer Schaefer, who have an address at 23 Morton Street, Needham, Mass. 02494 zip code. The property has a street address of 28 Wildwood Avenue, Kennebunkport, Maine. 04046, identified as Assessor's Tax Map 35, Block 1, Lot 12, on the Municipal Assessor's Tax Maps. The property is located in the Goose Rock Shoreland and Resource Protection Zones. The property consists of approximately 5,996 square feet, is legally non-conforming, and does not meet the setback requirements of the Land Use Ordinance Article 4.17A, as it is completely in the shoreland zone and partially within the 75-foot setback from wetland. The applicants are represented by Peterson Design Group with an office at 5 Nasons Court, Suite 5, Kennebunk, Maine. 04043, hereinafter the applicant, and have demonstrated a legal interest in the property by providing a copy of a deed of sale by personal representative dated December 30th, 2020, recorded in York County Registry of Deeds, Book 18510, pages 325 to 326. Excuse me. In an earlier approved application, findings of fact 8421, the applicants proposed to replace an existing residence having an interior square footage of 1,514.36 square feet with a new residence having an interior square footage of 1,894 square feet. In the present application, the applicants will replace existing residence with a new residence having an interior square footage of 1,968.5 square feet, a 29.9% expansion. The lot coverage will remain the same at 35.59%. The new residence will now have an interior volume increase of 25.6%, the existing volume being 17,177.24 cubic feet to 21,568 cubic feet of the proposed new residence. The new residence does not change the extrusion into the 75-foot setback and maintains the setbacks from the abutting properties in the street. The applicants have received approval from the Maine Department of Environmental Protection, MDEP, permit by rule. The proposed finished floor elevation of the new structure will be no lower than an elevation of 15.75 feet, which meets the requirement of being 2 feet higher than the proposed FEMA flood elevation of 13 feet. Any corresponding increase in roof height should be allowable as long as it falls under the town's description of maximum building height from the original 30 feet. The applicant has requested no submission waivers from the requirements of the Kennebunkport Land Use Ordinance. The applicant has requested no performance standard waivers from the requirements of the Kennebunkport Land Use Ordinance. Pursuant to the requirements of Article 1010A of the Land Use Ordinance, Guidelines for Decisions, the planning board shall approve a site plan application unless it makes a negative finding on one or more of the following identified findings, which would otherwise compel denial. A, the proposed use meets the definition or specific requirements set forth in the Land Use Ordinance and will be in compliance with applicable state or federal laws. Finding is yes. The proposed use will not create fire safety hazards and will provide adequate access to the site or to the buildings on the site for emergency vehicles. Finding yes. The proposed exterior lighting will not create hazards to motorists traveling on adjacent public streets and is adequate for the safety of occupants or users of the site and will not damage the value or diminish the usability of adjacent properties. Finding yes. The provisions for buffers and on-site landscaping provide for adequate protection to neighboring properties from detrimental features of development. Finding yes. The proposed use will not have a significant detrimental effect on the use and peaceful enjoyment of abutting property as a result of noise, vibrations, fume, odor, dust, glare, or other cause. Finding, yes. The provisions for vehicular loading and unloading and parking and for vehicular and pedestrian circulation on the site and onto adjacent public streets will not create hazards to safety. Finding, yes. Note, a new crushed stone driveway for parking will replace the old driveway. The proposed use will not have a significant detrimental effect on the value of adjacent properties, nor has a significant detrimental effect which could be avoided by reasonable modification of the plan. Finding, yes. The design of the site will not result in significant flood hazards or flood damage and is in conformance with applicable flood hazard protection requirements. Finding, yes. Note, the proposed structure will have a poured concrete foundation with floodgates, and the lowest floor is in compliance with FEMA-based flood elevation for its area. Adequate provision has been made for disposal of wastewater or solid waste and for prevention of ground or surface water contamination. Finding, yes. Adequate provision has been made to control erosion or sedimentation. Finding, yes. Adequate provision has been made to handle stormwater runoff or other drainage problems on the site. Finding, yes. The proposed water supply will meet the demands for the proposed use for fire protection purposes. Finding, yes. Adequate provision has been made for the transportation, storage, and disposal of hazardous substances and materials as defined by state law. Finding, yes. The proposed use will not have an adverse impact on significant scenic vistas or on significant wildlife habitat, nor will have such an impact that could be avoided by reasonable modification of the plan. Finding, yes. Note, applicant will not use fertilizers or pesticides on this lot. Window screens and other design modifications are present to protect against bird collisions with windows and doors. The proposed use will not cause unreasonable highway or public road congestion. Finding, yes. Existing off-site ways and traffic facilities can safely and conveniently accommodate the increased traffic generated by the development as far away from the development as the effects of the development can be traced with reasonable accuracy. Finding is not applicable. When a proposed development will be located within the shoreland and resource protection zones, in addition to the requirements of Kennebunkport Land Use Ordinance, Article 10, the town-wide regulations in Article 6, the performance standards for the specific activities and land uses in Article 7, approval of the development will also require that the board makes positive findings based on the information presented that the proposed use, excuse me, will maintain safe and healthful conditions. Finding, yes. Will not result in water pollution, erosion, or sedimentation to surface waters. Finding, yes. Will adequately provide for the disposal of all wastewater. Finding, yes. Will not have an adverse effect on spawning grounds, fish, aquatic life, bird, or other wildlife habitat. Finding, yes. Will conserve shore cover and visual as well as actual points of access to inland and coastal waters. Finding, yes. Will protect archaeological and historic resources as designated in the comprehensive plan. Finding is not applicable. Will avoid problems associated with floodplain development and use. Finding, yes. Is in conformance with the performance standards set forth in section 5.6 of the Kennebunkport Land Use Ordinance. Finding, yes. Any negative finding by the board means that the application has been denied. The application is otherwise complete. Conclusions. Articles 1010A of the Land Use Ordinance mandates that the planning board shall approve a site plan application unless it makes one or more identified findings that would otherwise compel denial. And as noted above, the board makes no such findings. decision. The site plan identified above is hereby approved. Conditions of approval, if any, pursuant to Article 1011 and 1012E. The applicants pursuant to 1012E shall notify the planning board prior to the transfer of rights to construct an approved project. No assignment or transfer of rights to construct an approved project is valid without prior review and approval by the planning board. The applicants must record a copy of this decision and provide proof of such recordation in the form of a copy thereof attested by the Registry of Deeds before any permit may issue or before any construction activity may commence. The applicants will not use fertilizers or pesticides on this lot. Window screens and other design modifications will be present to protect against bird collisions with windows and doors. The applicant will comply with all terms and conditions of the Town of Kennebunkport ordinances, as well as the MDEP approvals. The date is left blank. I think that April's probably going to fill it in. And so say the Kennebunkport Planning Board.
Okay. So can I have a motion to approve that as read?
So moved.
Second? I'll second it. Okay, so going through the four of us, I'm in favor. Nina?
In favor.
Ed?
Yes, in favor.
George?
In favor.
Okay, so I guess we will need to get over to see April and have all four of us sign the document. Hopefully over the next couple of days. And thank you, Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Boak. Appreciate your time.
Okay.
And good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Okay. The second item is item 220102, KG Trudeau Properties Atlantic Resource Consultants, LLC, agent, revised sketch plan review. So if you can bring forward Mr. Langlois and Jim Logan, please. And take Eric down, I guess. There, okay. Please.
Good evening. Can we hear each other?
We can hear Jim. There.
All right, can you hear me too?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you.
So anyhow, this is a revised sketch plan. We saw you guys walked us through the place and have a new proposed layout, and I guess you want to review it with us before you actually do the site plan. I'm sorry, the subdivision plans. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. Thank you and good evening. My name is Lucian Langlois with Atlantic Resource Consultants, and I'm joined by Jim Logan of Longview Partners. We've both been working for Jonathan Trudeau under his company KJ Trudeau Properties LLC. The basics of this have not changed. Still the same lot, still nine lots total, each with 3 acres of upland area. The main reason for the revision to the sketch plan application is the road design has changed. And this design change is requesting a waiver of the street design standards. Typically, dead-end streets and cul-de-sacs are limited to 1,000 linear feet. Our design proposes just under 1,200 linear feet of road. 1,160 linear feet will lead to the back 2 lots, and a second cul-de-sac that is measuring 590 feet goes off to the northeast. This design allows us to dramatically reduce the impacts to protected natural resources. Our first design, which contained a loop road, that included 4 stream crossings and 4 wetland crossings. This new design brings us down to 2 stream crossings and 1 wetland crossing. There will be 2 shared driveways for access to the eastern lots, lot 2 and 3, as well as the northwestern lots. That's 9 and 7 and 8 actually. So those are the major changes here. And again, that's a request for a waiver of that design standard.
Okay, now the wetland crossings, the significant stuff is still being avoided, right?
Yeah, exactly. So this design also lets us maintain a 75-foot setback. Once we cross the streams, we can maintain a 75-foot setback from streams, building outside of that setback, which is a DEP standard. And we can maintain a 25-foot setback for individual lot development as well. The only areas where it's kind of borderline where there may be some wetland impact is right along the cul-de-sac that extends to the north along lot 4. There may be a little bit of wetland impact with that road right there. Besides that, every development of each individual lot can maintain a 25-foot setback to wetlands.
Okay, can you pop this up on your screen, the drawing? Can one of you put it up on?
Lucian, can you manage that, or Warner, do you have that in your capability? Have the electronic transmission that was sent?
I can pull that up if you all are not able to.
Lucian and I would be very obliged if you could manage that.
Sure thing.
Would.
Okay, so everybody should be able to see
There you go.
that plan. And I'll just zoom that back a little bit.
So it looks to be a wetlands cross. There's a wetlands crossing where you're going up to lots 7 and 8, right? It's fairly.
Right.
Correct. Yeah, that extra amount of linear feet on the culvert allows us to fully cross that area at pretty much the narrowest point.
If the board remembers the site walk, there was quite a bit of spatial distance between the logical largest areas of upland and this road layout and the idea for these driveways that will access eventually each of the building sites. We've talked with John at length about longer driveways that will be necessary to avoid wetland impacts, and the fact that there will be a few shared driveways also to avoid wetland impacts. The longer driveways will allow access to these pretty well-spaced house sites that should have good privacy in between them, and also take the best advantage of the uplands that we had to work with once the road alignment was more or less formalized. I'll repeat for the public record that this waiver for road length that we're requesting was brought as a suggestion from one of the board members, and I was pleased that it was only in the 1,200 foot range and didn't require even more of a waiver request. So this, I believe, satisfies. Also, the stream crossing out near the cul-de-sac on the other end, the shorter length of road, if you notice that placement of crossing yes, right there, is through an upland portion of the property. It is a stream crossing, but it is strictly through uplands. We've identified that location as a good place to try to get the road through, such that the wetland impacts will not be required. It'll just be the placement of a culvert and getting through the stream itself. Should there be further questions from the board, we would happily entertain them. This predominantly was just to get a feel from the board so that we could proceed with lengthy engineering, costly engineering to Mr. Trudeau that we would like to just minimize the process on. There's generally some revisions needed, but if we could avoid major changes to the future layout, it will, the board would know what to expect in the future, as well as John Trudeau being able to move forward with some idea of the costs of engineering being pretty well nailed down.
Could you point out where there's going to be a shared driveway between lot 6 and 7?
6 and 7. Hold on just a minute.
That's the furthermost in, I believe. Lot.
Can you speak to that, Lucian?
Yeah, so that can swing right along the eastern edge of that wetland along lot 7 to access lot 6 up there.
So the driveway will go all the way up there.
It would, yeah. So lot 6 does have frontage along the main road as well. But it's not feasible to get through that extensive amount of wetland to access that upland building area.
But you see the large piece of upland on that lot that John will be accessing with that longer driveway to make a house in the central portion of the lot where the uplands are the widest.
Yeah. So to be clear, that for lot 6, if I'm looking at the driveway access, they'll need to have an access easement, coming off of the cul-de-sac that cuts through lot 7. So you'll want to make sure that gets figured into your deductions.
Yes, no doubt. We understand there's going to be a lot more detail coming forward with the preliminary plan. Again, we thought we had this balanced and wanted to just sound the board on the concept of the layout and the road alignment and the waiver request that's imminent now. And then we could go to town making all of those details clear on the plan for the preliminary plan phase. As you know, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Have you checked with the fire chief that this is acceptable to him?
Not as yet, because you folks are where we start.
Okay.
That will certainly be something that will take place between now and any significant work in that preliminary plan phase.
I would suggest that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Something explained to me, in your first application, you have a very detailed soils map. And this one, it's not so concise. It looks like you broadened out your Lyman E and Lyman B and so forth. And there are very few pockets of different soils. But in your first plan, I saw an awful lot of division of different types of soils.
Yes, that first map was it captured a lot more area where our project isn't taking place on the parcel. So this second map really confines to the exact boundaries of the development.
Rest assured, Nina, that in the preliminary plan phase and in the wider section of your review, we will include a high-intensity soil survey that will be much more detailed and get at this, exactly what you're talking about.
Okay. Have you done test pits?
That's, again, we were refraining from doing too much additional work until we sort of had a feeling from the board that this layout would be acceptable to go forward with. Then we'll start billing for additional field work that will include 2 suitable septic sites per lot, as well as adequate soil test pit logs to provide that high intensity soil survey.
Okay.
We have some already excavated, and we have a sense of where some suitability is. They are not shown on this particular map, but I've been working on this property since back in 2014, and we have GPS shots in numerous locations where we previously identified suitable soils so that we can go back to those locations, re-verify, and provide official profile descriptions to the board.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. Ed, do you have anything on this?
Yes. I have several things, but the first one is, could you talk me through access to the common lands for each of the lots? I'm having a hard time envisioning how anybody except for lots 6 and 7 are going to have access to the common area.
I believe we've intended to bind all the outer edge of everyone's lot into that open space. This plan, again, it's a sketch plan, and that detail will be much more evident on a future plan. But my discussions with the engineer, and Lucian, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe we were planning all of the outer boundaries of each individual lot to contain or include connection to a 25, I believe it's a 25-foot wide strip all the way up the side boundaries to the biggest open space at the rear of the subdivision. Correct.
So, Jim, I don't have any problem that this being a sketch plan. I don't mean to quiz you for details that obviously wouldn't be here now. So no need to apologize for that. I'm merely saying that when this comes before the board as an application, I, for one, will be interested in how the folks that are in all of the lots can have access to the common land. And right now, that area that you're referring to looks like it's full of wetlands that wouldn't be cleared necessarily and wouldn't be usable by the people in order to get to the larger area. So I don't see it. That's all I'm saying. And I'll be looking for that in the application. I'm assuming that's the type of thing that you're interested in at the sketch plan. And again, I don't mean to.
Yes, no, I'm taking notes, Ed. I appreciate it. It is a comment that I do appreciate you're making.
Okay. All right.
We will address it.
Thank you. I was trying to envision, and again, this just goes to my lack of ability to envision. Will you be able to please, at the application time, put a target building area on the plan? Obviously, it's in the uplands area somewhere, but if it would help me envision, like on lot 2, I'll pick any one of them. Where would it be possible to put a house there? And then I can start to envision how I might have a shared driveway, which I assume would be shown as well. That would be really useful. And then the third one, the last one I have is, could you say something about what type of techniques you will use to cross in particular, the large wetland that's on the left-hand driveway at the end of it there, between lot 7 and, well, I guess it's on lot 8 primarily. How do you go about crossing that?
Oh, sorry about that. Hit the wrong.
I can start in on that. So the standard wetland crossing, it's not just about the amount of flow. It's really about making sure that we have animal connectivity as well underneath the road for them. So we do size wetland crossings to be at minimum 3 feet in diameter for a round pipe. And in this particular crossing, I would envision culverts spaced out to where there'd be at least 2. The Army Corps of Engineers usually likes to see them spaced out 50 feet apart. And I think that would put us right at the edges of the wetland. So I think we'd probably have to not space them out that much for this particular crossing, but I don't know if one crossing would be, or one culvert would be enough to satisfy our resource agencies in this scenario.
And then the maintenance of those culverts would be the responsibility of an HOA that would collectively be owned by all the lots. Is that how that works?
Correct. Yep. That would be turned over to the HOA, which would do routine maintenance, like if there's leaf debris buildup,
Sure.
if they see any erosion occurring, anything like that. Yep.
All right. Thank you. Those are mine. That's all I had.
Okay, and to point out the usual thing that the selectmen like us to point out, this is never intended to be anything but private roads,
Yes.
correct?
That is
Okay.
correct.
Yes, we believe that.
Okay. George, do you have any questions?
I think as a sketch plan, this is untenable. Just an ongoing and growing concern, protection of the wetland here. Every time we start putting up a place to live, I understand, but every time he's putting up houses around down here, wildlife and the birds and everything else have got less purchase with the territory. So look forward to seeing how you've done it. I think you've done the best you can with the space you got to work with. Let's I action to this as a sketch.
Okay. So I think everybody, we have a slightly reduced board this evening, but I think you've heard from everybody. I'm sure that when it comes in for real, you'll have wonderful questions from Larry.
Oh, boy.
So, you know that anyway. But
May I ask the few board members that are present? There is, based on tonight's look and the review of the plans resubmitted, a good likelihood of the requested waiver for the road length being acceptable. I heard no issue about that from the board, so I'm assuming that we could move forward with the rest of the work.
We mostly want to hear from the fire chief on that subject.
But
We go with his recommendation.
Yeah, well,
I didn't personally have any problem with it, but I agree with you, Tom. Exactly right. That's the only concern I would have.
well, I'm glad to see that it's not the other road plan that you had, which I think was a little too much.
I think it's
And
good.
I think this is an improvement, definitely. I'm going to point out that with so much wetland around, you've got up and down there, that we do look at restrictions on things like the use of pesticides and herbicides around wetlands, just like I did in the last application, if you were listening. That was very close to a marsh and in the resource protection zone. And also some sort of adequate provision when building to reduce bird strikes, which result in, millions of birds being killed every year into residences, not just big, tall buildings, but residences. So.
Well, we appreciate the board's input. This, to us, is part of the planning process. So we appreciate the board's input. In terms of bird strikes, Nina, I think maybe there's some protective language we could put into something that would, housing documents or something that would require screens on the outside or something that's more obvious to the birds.
Yeah, the same for pesticide or fertilizer use. If you do a little research, you'll find that there are design elements you can use putting into houses with overhangs and so forth that reduce reflections. There's bird-proof glass being more and more made available. Most builders don't want to spend the money on that, but screens on the outside are important to help reduce those strikes.
Sure. And I know, having worked in Kennebunk many years, the Kennebunk Planning Board has routinely also required in approvals at their level, restricted the use of pesticides and herbicides. So this is something that's common, and we certainly can address it as we move forward with the planning.
Yeah.
Right.
But again, those are elements that we can deal with relatively easily. It was more the mechanics of engineering and.
No, I understand that. I just wanted to give you a heads up.
Thank you so kindly. Very much appreciated.
Okay. And I think unless somebody else has anything to say, I think you've gotten our inputs.
We thank you, and we've got our work cut out for us.
You do indeed. And thank you very much.
Thank you,
Good
both.
evening, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Okay. And I will accept, and don't forget to go see April in the next 2 days to sign off that finding of facts. And beyond that, I'll accept a nice motion
I wanted
from
to,
George.
from me, I will, and I'm going to thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for. But I did want to point out that we do only have a vacancy now to anybody who attendee. There is on the board as an alternate. We're always looking for peers. It's a rewarding job, and you occasionally get to make a motion to adjourn.
Which somebody else will second.
Okay. It's made and seconded. I heard that. So
Very nice.
we will, the four of us, I believe, all are happy to adjourn. So
Aye.
Absolutely.
aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
See you next time.
Okay.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.